voluntary agent for a welcoming statement.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Just want to thank you all for joining today. I know we have a lot of great speakers, so we will learn a lot, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Amy. And by the way, this is recorded, so we will be able to share this later on as well. And all right, so again, thank you guys so much for coming out and being here, being able to present as well to our two presenters. I would like to introduce our first presenter, Alicia Morris, who is the FEMA Individual Assistance Liaison, presenting on FEMA IA policy, FEMA Individual Assistance Policy, Procedures, and Sequence of Delivery.
Hello, good afternoon. So I am trying to share my screen. Let's see. Okay, I think I've got it. Here we go. All right, so can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
And do you see my screen?
No, ma'am.
Uh-oh.
Okay, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, I'm not real good at Zoom. I do a lot of Teams meetings, so I appreciate your patience. Let's see. In fact, I can't even tell if my camera is on or where to find it. So I'm just going to get started. My name is Alicia Morris. I am the Individual Assistance Liaison for Disaster 4618 Pennsylvania. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you about individuals and households program and our appeals process. So Pennsylvania was declared on September 10th. The incident period for remnants of Hurricane Ida in Pennsylvania is August 31st through September the 5th. Excuse me, sorry. Let's see. The incident type remnants is very misleading because I have looked at almost every registration in this disaster, and the inspection results are telling me water, 7-8 feet of water on the first floor, water in the attic, water over the roof. So the remnants, in my opinion, is a little bit misleading. The cause of damage that was declared includes flood, sewer backup, tornado wind, hail, rain and wind, seepage, power surge and lightning. The application period, well, I need to update my slide. September 10th through November 10th, unless extended, but it has been extended until December 10th. The financial closure is March 10th of 2023. And then we have 8 designated counties. So what I want to talk about first, and if you're not familiar with our program, this can be a little confusing, and it is very detailed, but there's a reason why I'm including all these, because in order to understand the appeal opportunities, it's important that we understand the program limitations. So the amount of financial assistance that an individual or household may receive under IHP is limited. Financial housing assistance and other needs assistance, we call it ONA, have independent and equal financial maximums, which are adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index. So when we talk about housing assistance, housing assistance includes home repair, home replacement, and I don't have temporary housing on this slide, and there's a reason. So there is a cap on housing assistance for home repair and home replacement for this disaster, which is $36,000. There's also a cap or a maximum that we can pay for other needs assistance for certain categories, and that's the personal property, transportation, moving and storage, medical, dental, funeral, childcare, miscellaneous other, and the group flood insurance policy. Keeping in mind that there are 3 of these categories: personal property, transportation, and the GFIP, which is dependent on an SBA loan, or whether you're referred back to FEMA after you apply for the loan if you are denied. Let's see. Okay. So again, here's this is talking about assistance that is not subject to any financial cap. So we have the 36,000 cap, right? For home repair, we can't go over that, or home replacement. However, temporary housing assistance, which includes lodging expense reimbursement and then rental assistance up to 18 months, is not subject to that maximum. We've also added housing accessibility items, which are not subject to that cap. And that those items are a access ramp and grab bars under housing, because it's considered real property. And then we also have certain ONA accessibility items that are not included or subject to that $36,000 cap. And we'll get into what those items are here in a little bit. But keep in mind that these ONA accessibility items do fall under personal property. Therefore, they are subject to an SBA. They're an SBA dependent category. These types of assistance are based on either receipts or fair market rates. So for example, lodging expense reimbursement would be based on receipts. And that's an opportunity for survivors who had hotel expenses to submit those expenses to us for reimbursement. Rental assistance up to 18 months is also based on, well, that's based on fair market rent. Or the actual that they're paying for rent, whichever is less, but we can't go over the fair market rent. Okay, so in the beginning, there's general conditions of eligibility. And that is basically that an applicant must be a US citizen, a non-citizen national, or a qualified alien. FEMA must be able to verify an applicant's identity, and the applicant's insurance or other forms of assistance received cannot meet their disaster cause needs. The applicant's necessary expenses and serious needs are directly caused by a declared disaster. Now, first, let me stop here real quick and let you know that everything that I'm talking about is in our IAPPG, which is it's a public document that you all have access to. If you don't have it at this time, Amy or one of the VALs can send that to you. It's also available on FEMA.gov. So once we get past those general conditions of eligibility, there are certain programs that in order to receive assistance, an applicant must satisfy additional conditions of eligibility that include proof of occupancy, home ownership, and identity. This presentation has the, let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so like for occupancy, we recently expanded what we can accept for proof of occupancy to try and make it more simple for survivors to prove occupancy. So we don't have to go through and you don't have to remember this entire list, because again, it is available in the IAPPG. And I believe the VALs are going to distribute this presentation to you. So also with home ownership, we've also expanded. These are some of the newer verification documents that we're able to receive. One of my favorite is that we've gone back to taking a self-declarative statement for folks that live in mobile homes or travel trailers, because they're, over the years, I've seen where a lot of folks may be living or own a mobile home or travel trailer where they don't have official title. Maybe it was given to them by a relative and they just don't have, and they're not able to prove ownership. So we're now able to take a statement, a declarative statement, or even a statement from a park owner or manager. So again, we don't have to go through all of these, and you don't have to remember it, because you're going to have access to what is acceptable as far as proving ownership. And then identity, which is one of the general conditions of eligibility, is we must be able to prove your identity. So when an applicant registers, our system does a public search, and it tells us immediately whether someone's identity failed. It can fail for various reasons. In fact, mine would probably fail because I have not changed my last name yet with the Social Security Administration after a marriage. So there's various documents that we can take and accept to prove identity and process any eligible award that's in the case that's waiting for identity verification. Let's see, the simplest thing as far as if you're dealing with an applicant that's struggling to prove identity is a driver's license and a social security card. They have to be submitted together. And then if you're dealing with a member or a veteran or a member of the military, we can accept, where is it? I think it's on here, military documents. Oh, wait a minute, hold on, applicant. I don't see it on here, but a military ID is included. Am I just missing it? Divorce. US passport. I think it's just left off. I will verify, but I'm positive a military ID will prove identity.
It's about proof identification.
Pardon?
It's right on that same page, but it's up above in the middle of the page.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell I'm nervous?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to relax. I have some support here. Thank you very much. Yes, military identification. All right, thanks again. Okay, so I know I've read this slide is redundant, but it is really important that folks that have been around FEMA for a while, that were used to us having a maximum, and it was a maximum that included everything, that you know that even though somebody may be maxed out on their home repair, that they can still appeal or apply for additional temporary housing assistance, because that was removed from the maximum, I think, after though I believe it was Hurricane Maria. It was around 2018 when we got new laws that allowed us to do this. And then a primary residence is a home where an applicant normally lives during the major portion of a calendar year, or the home that is required because of proximity to employment, including agricultural activities that provide 50% of a household's income. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about ONA and getting into what I call appeal opportunities. We have in this disaster so many appeal opportunities that our applicants may not even be aware of. So I know that I stress this over and over, the appeal opportunities. Yes, when we award assistance, our letters do state you have the right to appeal, but that sounds so difficult. It sounds to some people like it's a legal process, or they may have to hire an attorney, but it's really very simple. So I want to start getting into some of these fantastic appeal opportunities that I'm hoping that everybody in Pennsylvania will take advantage of. But first, with regards to ONA, again, there are certain categories that are dependent on the SBA and whether or not they qualify or receive a loan. Right now, there's only three: personal property assistance, transportation, and the GFIP policy that we purchase for applicants who have damages caused by flood that live in a flood zone. Those 3 items are dependent on an SBA loan. For this disaster, for Pennsylvania, the transportation replacement cap is $9,400. And then the vehicle repair is $50 up to $9,399. So I look at that right there and I see an appeal opportunity, because it's been many years since I've had a mechanic's bill that was $50. So if somebody had damage to a vehicle that's repairable, initially they're going to receive $50. At that point, what we are waiting for is for them to come back with an appeal, and just a short written letter, 1 sentence. I'm appealing for the amount of vehicle that I received. Please see my mechanic's estimate. And then we can pay it up to the $9,399. And then the SBA or the non-SBA ONA categories are the funerals. For this disaster, the funeral cap is $10,000 per decedent. We have actually paid 2 funerals for Pennsylvania. Then we have the medical and dental assistance. There is no cap on that, other than the 36,000 ONA cap. So if you're not with FEMA and you don't know IHP, I know that you're probably thinking this is extremely confusing, but don't be frustrated. It is confusing. I'm hoping that you can see these appeal opportunities and understand the different caps and what has a cap and what doesn't. We also offer childcare assistance, which is a non-SBA dependent category, and that can go up to $7,200 per household. And then assistance for miscellaneous items. And an example of that for this disaster, what I've seen the most of are dehumidifiers. In Pennsylvania, we're paying, I think, $249.99 for dehumidifiers. And then, of course, we've got moving and storage, which is also a non-SBA dependent category. So I was talking earlier about some of the ADA accessible items that we now have listed. In the system that we process cases in. We call it NEMIS. ONA personal property ADA items are not subject to the ONA max, and these can be paid at actual with supporting documentation. So here again is another appeal opportunity, because I look at an ADA accessible bed. I think in this disaster, the initial amount that we're paying is around $600. I can't remember exactly. It could be $671 or $681. Well, I have seen accessible beds. I think the most expensive one I saw was when working Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and it was for a young man with severe disabilities, and that bed literally cost $18,000. So if you're working with an applicant that received assistance for any of these items right here, accessible bed, walker, wheelchair, on down the line, if they receive the initial assistance, that's just to start with. And that again is one of the appeal opportunities. So I'll use a wheelchair for an example. We're going to pay a bottom dollar, just a general dollar amount for a wheelchair. But there are some folks who have wheelchairs that do many things, like it might be an electric wheelchair. It might be a special type of wheelchair that could be very expensive. And that's, again, when another one of those appeal opportunities comes to play, where if we give that initial assistance for that wheelchair, we're just waiting for that applicant to come back with a 1-sentence appeal. I'm appealing the amount of my wheelchair. Please see estimate or receipt. Let's see. Now, there are other items that, if they're not on this list of ADA items, that we can pay under medical, and those would be non-SBA dependent. Okay, and that would be something like glasses, hearing aids, things like that. So we don't have to worry about the SBA. That those can be paid under medical. Where it gets kind of confusing and hard is the ones that we have, these ADA items that we now have listed that are subject to SBA. Unfortunately, the way that, because they're under personal property and the way the program is, they do need to first apply for an SBA loan in order for us to find them or be able to assist with these items. Anything not on this list, again, would be paid under medical. And then for medical, you're basically, you just need to submit, for medical, it has to be a disaster caused injury or illness, a pre-existing injury, disability, or medical condition aggravated by the disaster, a loss of medication, loss or damage to medical or dental equipment, medical or dental insurance deductible charges, and co-pays. And then you just submit the documents, and we'll review for reimbursing on medical. Something that we added after the 2017, these disasters are starting to run together. It was 2017 when we had what was called the, what we call it DRRA laws, Disaster Recovery Reform Act, where we added service animals. So if somebody has lost or an injured service animal, we can help with veterinary expenses for disaster caused injuries for service animals, replacement and or training costs for service animals, and lost or damaged equipment that enables the service animal to fulfill its function, such as the specialized leash, harness, or vest. And then again, this is just the verification required documents that are needed. Of course, they have to have identity verified, an insurance settlement document or denial, disaster caused damage loss verification, which would need to be a statement from a physician, and proof of the expense, either a receipt or estimate. Okay, and some more appeal opportunities. FEMA may provide assistance for reimbursement for the actual cost associated with the repair or replacement of the following home repair items. Let's see, that is wells, furnace, septic systems, access roads and bridges that are privately owned, and then the ADA access ramp and grab bars that we talked about earlier. So keep in mind that these items are subject to the HA maximum, which is the $36, with the exception of that ADA access ramp. Let's see, eligible expenses, would be the typical, the unit. If the unit has to, like if you have a furnace that has to be upgraded to meet current code requirements, can also include the cost of permits, labor, removal, installation, disposal, and ductwork. So the way this works is when we conduct the FEMA inspection and somebody informs that they have damage to, say, a well, septic, or access road or bridge, they're initially going to get a couple less than $200 for each item. And that's basically just for a service call. We know we can't fix a furnace for, I think it's $174 for the service call for a furnace, same for a well and septic. But what we're waiting for is for that applicant to submit a written appeal, appealing the damage to the septic system. Please see my contractor's estimate, and then submit a verifiable contractor's estimate. And by verifiable, all that means is there must be a phone number, because our caseworkers are required to call the contractor and ask a few questions and verify that it was disaster related, that it's not an upgrade, and that it can't be repaired, it must be replaced. Just a few questions like that. So it does have to be verifiable. We are just now assigning folks to start processing those wells furnace, actually the furnaces, because it was brought to NIPSI leadership, and NIPSI, that's the National Processing Service Center, I'm in Texas and it's really warm right now, that it gets a little bit cold in Pennsylvania. So we're on a push now to get these furnaces paid. So we're going to start seeing that furnace money go out at actual, hopefully very soon. We've already paid a couple of privately owned bridges and multifamily roads and bridges. So that's really exciting to see that money go out. I did see where it was 3 families that shared a road, and to repair that road, I'll have to do math. I'm not going to do the math, but each family received in excess of $18,000. So then they're going to pull that money together and repair that multifamily road. I've seen and one applicant, it was a woman with a mobility disability that had, this was actually a very high profile case here in Pennsylvania. She had a mobility disability. Her driveway was completely destroyed. They couldn't get trucks. In fact, this was brought to our attention by one of the VALs. They couldn't get the trucks in to bring heating oil to her house. So we rushed that one up to the processing centers and got her some money so that she can fix that road and get heating oil. That was one of my favorite cases that I saw, where everybody got together and worked together and helped this woman get her driveway fixed. Okay, so now we have what we call uninsurable items. Uninsurable items, insured applicants and applicants who are not eligible for home repair because maybe they're non-compliant with a flood requirement may still receive home repair assistance for wells, septic systems, and privately owned access roads and bridges. So we've got applicants that have major damage, just devastating damage. They've got flood insurance and they receive a check from FEMA for $174. And the reason for that is because they've got flood insurance. We cannot help with any home repair due to their flood insurance, but we know that these 3 items are uninsurable. So we go ahead and send that service call dollar amount out, which is, it's hard for our applicants to understand when they had water in their attic, why FEMA would send them $174. But if you look at the case and you talk to them and you learn that they had flood insurance or they're non-compliant, that's why we cannot help with the home repair, but we're still here to help with any of these uninsurable items. But again, this is another wonderful appeal opportunity. I love those words, appeal opportunities. This is 3 more appeal opportunities where we are just waiting for the applicant to submit that written appeal and then a contractor's estimate. Doesn't have to be a receipt. They don't have to pay for it first. We will pay it based off of an estimate. So I threw this in here because this is some of the recent changes that have happened here with FEMA. Disaster calls mold. So if you've been around FEMA for a while, you know that we never touched mold. We would be like, no, we don't help with mold. It's, you know, it's outside of our program limitations. So we are, and this happened right before Hurricane Ida in Pennsylvania, are able to offer financial assistance to clean or repair real property components impacted by disaster caused mold growth. I can tell you that that line item amount for Pennsylvania is $1,500. It is not appealable. It's a set amount. And then something else that we just recently did a few months ago that I think is very survivor centric for people that are injured in a disaster is we can now provide financial assistance for adding real property accessibility related items limited to grab bars, a ramp, and a paved pathway when those items are necessary to make the home safe and functional for someone who has a disaster-caused disability. Whereas in the past, if you didn't have an access ramp prior to the disaster, we were not able to assist with one. But now if it's a disaster-caused disability, we can. Another one that I really like is the Clean and Sanitize, which is approved here in Pennsylvania. So I don't know if you remember the days of ineligible insufficient damage, where applicants would just be denied. They would not receive any money because it was determined that your home is safe to live in. What we're doing now is if it comes back as habitability repairs required, no, we go ahead and offer a flat $300 to help with Clean and Sanitize. And then the next one's a little bit confusing, SBA dependent ONA, where what we did is we lowered that threshold so that the income threshold, so that more people are eligible for ONA without having to go through the SBA. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't apply with the SBA. They still can. And then if the SBA finds them eligible, they're just going to reduce the loan amount for any assistance that FEMA gave. Okay, we're almost to the end. Appeals, it's very simple. So the applicant's appeal letter must explain the reason for the appeal, be signed by the applicant or person who the applicant authorized to act on their behalf. The appeal submission should include their full name, the FEMA application number, the address of the pre-disaster primary residence, their current phone number and address, and then any documentation to support the appeal request, such as repair estimates, contractor estimates, or other supporting documentation. Applicants have up to 60 days to appeal. We are now past that 60 days. So we have folks that got their initial assistance more than 60 days ago, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. All they need to do is when they appeal, put an explanation why they couldn't appeal within the 60 days. And most times what we see the reason is because of lack of available contractors, illness, work, whatever. I'm not seeing anybody being denied because they missed that 30-day that 60-day appeal deadline. Just ask them to include a reason why. And then there's several ways that you can submit those appeals. You can fax them, mail them to our National Processing Service Center. And then they can also create what we call a DAC account, the Disaster Assistance Center account, and upload the documents themselves. Before I go on to the written consent, I'm all about appeal opportunities and people being able to take advantage of all the FEMA dollars that they're eligible for. Another appeal opportunity that is not in this, that is also important, other than the wells, the septics, furnaces, single family or multifamily road and bridge, is when we do inspections now, we are paying what's called a level of damage. So we could have an inspection return with a level 2, and I'm not an inspector. Perhaps our inspection service coordinator could give a presentation to explain that process, but there's certain criteria where they come up with these levels. So it may be if you had 2 feet of water on the first floor, maybe you're a level 2. Okay, well, that level 2 is a set dollar amount. These are, in my opinion, are some of the best appeal opportunities, because the way that this works is, say that the level 2, we send them $3,000, okay? And then they hire a contractor and they learn that it's going to cost $5,000 to repair that home. At that point, we need them to write the easy 1-sentence appeal. I'm appealing the amount of home repair. Please see my contractor's estimate. We are automatically going to bump them up to the next level and we don't even require an appeal inspection. Now, I'm going to be honest, that contractor's estimate has to be things that are making the home habitable. So for example, if that estimate includes things like repairing an in-ground swimming pool or a fence or rebuilding a non-essential basement, we would have to back those dollars out to see if the estimate is greater than the level of damage that we awarded. Written consent. So we recently got the approved form, the written consent form. So we know, we no longer have to worry about all of this stuff. It's all in the form. The form is available on FEMA.gov. I included a snapshot of it so you can see how simple it is. I'm sure you've all seen it. We just need that filled out and then faxed in and uploaded to the applicant's file so that we can release information to either a voluntary agency that may, and we get this a lot, where the voluntary agency person will actually call our helpline and ask questions. And unless this document is in the file, we would not be able to speak to that person. And I think that is all. Unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Alicia. Anyone can take themselves off mute to ask a question, or if they need some clarity on a certain topic, please feel free.
Hi, my name is Sunitha. I'm from Carson Valley Children's Aid. Can you go over the SBA process? I think I was a little lost on that.
Sure. So I'm not with SBA, so I can't really go over their process. I can go over again what items that we can't assist with unless they go through an SBA loan. Now, we can get you the number to call SBA or for applicants if they need to apply with the SBA. But these are the items, anything personal property, transportation, and then the group flood insurance policy. In order for FEMA to be able to provide assistance for any of those three items, an applicant must, if they're referred to the SBA, they must go through that process in order to see if they qualify for a loan. And then there are instances where an applicant will apply with the SBA and they won't qualify for that loan and may be referred back to FEMA. So it's really important that applicants, if they are referred to the SBA, that they go through that process. Even if they are insistent that I don't need a loan, I don't want a loan, I can't afford a loan. The best one is, I don't have a job, I lost my job in the disaster, I can't afford a loan. Well, ma'am, that's why I need you to go apply for it, because they're going to deny you that loan, and then I can help you with all of that personal property loss. But unless they go through that process, we can't assist. And then these are the three items. And then remember, personal property also includes these ONA 88 items. So thank you for that. That's a good question. And yes, the SBA process and trying to learn what items are dependent on SBA can be very confusing if you're not really familiar with our program.
And is there a special, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Anthony Pluchino with St. Vincent de Paul. Was the question more about the SBA process, submitting an application? What criteria do they look at?
No, I definitely appreciate the content you just delivered, but I was also wondering, like, you know, I mean, she did explain that they have to apply, and if they don't qualify, then they can come back to FEMA.
Right, yeah.
But I was also trying to figure out, is there a special application for the participants? How long would it take?
Yeah,
before they get
there's a whole process, and
Right.
you know, we've dealt from St. Vincent de Paul through our disaster case management program. There's an application process. It's like you're applying for the loan. They're going to do a background check, credit check, and all of those things just to see whether or not you're eligible. And as Alicia said, if you come back not being able to sustain a loan, then you're able to go to ONA, which would be beneficial to the survivor client.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Reverend Brunson, and I was calling on, need some information. We are suffering from a church flood. We were turned down by FEMA, not by FEMA, by SBA, and referred back to FEMA. So we still qualify under these items that Alicia was talking about?
Okay, so when you say a church, is it, I mean, if it's your primary residence?
No, it's not a primary residence. It's a church.
Yeah, okay. So FEMA's assistance is limited to primary residences only. So I'm wondering, and we could get more information on that, whether that may fall under public assistance. I'm really not sure.
Okay.
This is Anthony again. If I can jump in, is that the church? Is that a 501c3 nonprofit?
Yes.
And you file tax returns and all the 990s and all that every year. So if that's the case, SBA, and I'm just curious, and you don't have to discuss it online. I'll leave my contact info if you want to reach out to me. But that should be, SBA also gives out loans to nonprofits and businesses during times of a disaster. So I'm just curious as to why they denied you. They should have at least accepted the application and looked through it.
They did accept the application, but
Okay.
they denied it because they felt that the income of the church was not high enough.
Okay. All right. So that's that credit and background check. So
Yeah.
Hey,
all right. Okay.
hey, it's Amy Eden, the voluntary agency liaison. I am going to put my email address in the chat, and if you could just send me your contact information, and I will talk to one of our public assistance team members and see, have one of them reach out to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions before we take a break? Okay, hearing none. So we are going to take a 5-minute break. So give you an extra minute. Let's all come back at 1:50.
Can I get the ability to share my screen so I can get ready for the next presentation?
Yes, you should be able to. Okay, I hope everyone's back. Sorry, I choked on some water. Great. So our next presenter, Anthony Pulcino. He is the Chief Program Officer for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, presenting on information to help case managers navigate disaster casework, appeals tips, and best practices relating to disaster case management. So Anthony, thank you again for coming out for presenting for us. So please take the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is, as Leanna said, Anthony Pulcino, and Chief Program Officer with Disaster Services Corporate Society of St. Vincent de Paul. A little bit about my background. I was a disaster case manager with Catholic Charities in New Jersey, and then was a supervisor in the DCMP program. Went to work with St. Vincent de Paul, and we've worked in various disasters throughout the country, and I currently manage all of the disaster case management programs that we have across the country. In addition to being part of St. Vincent de Paul, I'm also the vice chair of the National VOAD, National Organizations Active in Disaster. They have a DCMP or a DCM committee. I'm vice chair on that. I'm also a member of the National VOAD Long-Term Recovery Group. In the state of New Jersey, where I reside, I'm the vice chair for the New Jersey VOAD, and chair of the Monmouth County Co-ed. So I have a little experience in all of the different areas that relate to disaster case management. Some of the programs in which St. Vincent de Paul has been involved in, just want to give you a flavor. These are some of the disaster case management programs, some within the last couple of years. You'll see we've been involved in Louisiana, in Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, and currently we're managing the DCMP program in Oregon. We also have a, just let me move this here, just bear with me. Okay. We also have, besides providing disaster case management, one of the other things that we have been involved in, we have a proprietary house in a box program in which we provide, and you'll see from the picture, flatware, glasses, kitchen tables, sofas, bedding, basically the contents for an entire house. We've even got it down to a science where if you have one of the medium-sized pickup trucks, you can put that on the back of your pickup truck. So those are a couple of things in which St. Vincent de Paul is involved in. When we look at a disaster is an event that disrupts normal life, causing physical and mental trauma and damage to property, community infrastructure, and these disasters, and we've experienced and seen them from hurricanes and tornadoes, storms, floods, wind, tidal waves, and earthquakes, and different things like that. So these are some of the areas in which we've been involved in. When we look at the disaster management cycle, it's broken down into 4 areas, and you have the response, recovery, mitigation, and preparation and training. And in the response phase, you'll see there's a star as to when the event occurred, and there's an immediate response, and you'll find the OEMs and FEMAs, as long as they're authorized to come into the area, will come in and provide immediate assistance. They're looking more to have the survivors put into a safe, sanitary, secure environment and try to get them stabilized. And then you look at the recovery portion of it. And this is really where you'll have the IA, individual assistance programs, and the PA, public assistance programs that will kick in from FEMA and the state. And you'll also start to see these requests for proposals for disaster case management, especially if they got awarded, if they were awarded IA. It's not necessarily, if an area is awarded IA, it's not necessarily they'll get a DCMP, but more than likely that could happen. And then that's when the DCMP kicks in, and that's sort of the recovery phase. And as you go through that recovery phase, then you learn if there's any mitigation factors or different items or policies, procedures, or rebuilding that can be put in place. So this way it'll prevent the damage in the future. And then there's the process of preparation and training that'll be ongoing after a disaster to prepare for the next one. What is a DCM? Case manager's case. What is a disaster case management? Is a time-limited process by which skilled helper, DCM manager, partners with a disaster-affected individual or family in order to plan for and achieve realistic goals for recovery following a disaster. Alicia gave a great presentation on the IHP and all those wonderful items that FEMA can help out with. And as we were going through that, if looking at all of the different assistance and benefits that FEMA can provide, there's a IA PG document that's been put out by FEMA. I think the latest one is 1.1. It's about a 250-page document. And I think I've read it once or twice, but as you can see from what was presented earlier, there are a lot of things that are going on. There is a lot of different nuances, especially when you're looking at the normal registration with FEMA, and then we'll talk about a little bit about SBA and ONA. But these were, as you can see, there the client and picture this in this time frame, and their mental state. Here they've gone through this disaster, probably lost everything, and now they'll register with FEMA, and now they have all these possibilities, and they don't know what to choose, and sometimes they're confused, and sometimes they just need help. This is where case management will come into play. Sometimes they would have this, what was called an IDCM, Immediate Disaster Case Management Program, which would come in and last for 90 days. And that hasn't been performed lately. Some of the states would take it on themselves, but that was kind of an interim that would help bridge the gap by the time the DCMP would come on board. But just listening and looking at the great slide presentation we had this morning, you can see that the survivor needs some assistance, and that's where the DCMP will come in. Who are these disaster case managers? And these are folks with specialized knowledge and skills regarding disaster recovery, resources advocacy, case presentation, assessment of the survivors, and disaster recovery planning, potential impact of survivors, overall well-being and ability to cope and the recovery needs of vulnerable populations after a disaster. You look at this and the skill set that they need is very diverse. When we look at case managers and you're looking to hire case managers, it's great if they have a social services background, and if they're an MSW, that's all great. But you also like to see if they have a diverse background in other areas, because all those, when you're working on this disaster case management program, you're taking in so many different roles and wearing so many different hats, and so many different situations arise, that if those individuals that have a good broad experience are those DCMs that tend to do well. Some of the soft skills that we look at is communication, leadership, teamwork, problem solving, work ethic, flexibility, adaptability, interpersonal skills. The communications, the DCM will be not only communicating with the survivor and the family, but also could be with the FEMA Val, it could be with their supervisor, it could be with different organizations that are providing different services and resources. Leadership, they have to be in a position where they can be able to help the client, help lead them and work with them, and not tell them what to do, but to have a leadership role where you can lay out all the different options and be able to present that and with the survivor. Teamwork, you find this is not a situation where it's going to be one DCM that can do everything by him or herself. It takes teamwork, and it takes involving multiple different organizations, and also an LTRG. Problem solving, you get problems all the day, every day, and keep in mind that generally the average caseload for a DCM is going to be about 35 cases to one DCM, different difficulty levels. So there's going to be a lot of challenges that are going to be there. So the person needs to be able to work and solve problems. Work ethic, this is not a type of position where you can just sit back and just let things happen. It takes a lot of time. You need to multitask, and you need to be dedicated to helping these individuals. You need to establish this trust, this bond with them, so this way they can trust you and they can rely upon you. And that is really a big factor. If the survivor or client doesn't have a trust in you and doesn't have a good relationship and bond, and that doesn't work well. And flexibility, adaptability. I tell any prospective DCMs, if you need a position, or if you're looking for something in which it's very rigid, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and everything is perfect, and you're not adaptable to change, then this may not be the position for you. And when we talk about change, and I'm not being negative or derogatory, please don't take anything that I say next on that. But there are times when policies change. FEMA will change things. They had some, you just heard some of the changes that they just had recently. And these changes, you may have been accustomed thinking that this is the way it worked maybe 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, but now it's different and things have changed. So you have to be able to be flexible and be able to change as the environment changes. And we find that those individuals that have that capacity to be flexible are ones that are more successful. Otherwise, you get very frustrated, and you don't serve the population. And biggest thing here, interpersonal skills. You're dealing with so many people. You need to have that good rapport and good relationship with everyone, with all of the different agencies you deal with. So here's a sample job description. They're going to be involved in long-term recovery. And the keys that I'm looking at from this slide is it's more like this is a long-term recovery, long-term relationship. It's not something where a quick story. When I first started as a DCM, client came in, just retired, paid off his house, storm hit, and it was destroyed, and had to put a lot of work into it. And he said to me, well, I'm going to have this done in 6 months. And looking at this, I said, this is not realistic. You have to plan out. There's so many other factors and that were going on. So no, I'm going to take the loan out. I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, a year and a half later is when he finally was able to say, Anthony, I'm finally moving back into my house. So this is a long-term commitment, a long-term situation. Some of the responsibilities of the case manager: develop a resource list. The disaster case manager is very instrumental in matching unmet needs that the client has with the different resources that are out there. That's one of their key functions. Assist the client in developing a long-range recovery plan. This is crucial. This is a very, very big item. You need an action plan. You need a recovery plan, and you need to work this out with the survivor, with the client. It's not the DCM telling the client what to do, but it's a partnership where they work together and they develop this recovery plan. So this way there is buy-in by the survivor and by the client, and assess the unmet recovery needs. And that's also part of the process, is to be able to identify, well, what are the unmet needs? Is it housing? Is it transportation? Is it unemployment? Is it household goods, furniture, things like that? And the last item, you'll see my last 4 words at the bottom there, which is highlighted in bold. It says, this is the most important, is the case notes and case narrative. Every time we stress, whenever a DCM needs to contact the client, the survivor, that should be documented. And then we talk about using a database, and that can be something like American Red Cross has what's called a CAN database, Coordinated Assistance Network. We've worked with in Harvey and currently in Oregon, we're using the VisionLink DART-based platform. But in any event, these are used for case management, but you can put the case notes in there. And we track the case notes to make certain that they that the DCMs are able, that the DCMs do contact and do put these case notes in there. That's very important. So this way, anyone that picks up the case file can see that what is going on with it. Some of the some continued responsibilities present the high priority unmet needs cases to the LTRG. We'll explore that in a little bit. Communicate back to the client the assistance to be provided from the LTRG, make any necessary referrals, and fill gaps in the assistance. Let's take a look at that. When you look at the profile of a survivor and a client, you'll do the income and expense, and you'll see what resources they have, what resources they've received, what assistance they've received from other organizations, and then you'll come up with a gap. And there's going to be X number of dollars that will be required to fill that gap. And sometimes that gap will be filled or satisfied by the long-term recovery group. Sometimes they may not be able to help with that, and sometimes the programs will have what's called a CDBG, Community Block Development.
Yeah, that was definitely wrong.
Someone has their mic. Could you please quiet your?
Yeah, is this the one we were supposed to be on? Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting feedback, so if you can.
It's coming up on the 30th, so. Yeah, some of just and that one Steph.
Hello, Connor.
She's talking to you. Oh.
Connor, can you please put yourself on mute? Okay, we should be good now.
Thank you. So you have that difference, that gap that will be needed to make that to achieve that recovery plan and to make that survivor whole. So that's something that they'll have to look at, and then we're looking at as he's going through the process to make certain the unmet needs are met, the recovery plans are achieved, and then you look to close off the close out the program, close out the case. Let's take a look at the DCM versus disaster case worker, and we'll look at the case worker. The case work will generally happen after a disaster, and as I mentioned earlier, we used to have an IDCM program, immediate disaster case management program, where you would have casework. And some of the noted areas, it's more early intervention, short-term relationship. The program would generally last about 90 days. You can't have any continuity of care is required because it's just such a short time frame. And it's generally initiated in the relief phase. It's more for obtaining, providing information and resources. And many times you're able to identify what the needs are. You have some immediate referrals and resources that you can just refer the family to, and then that should satisfy it. And they're also there to be able to stabilize and transition the case. When you look at it compared to a case management, the case management, the disaster case manager becomes the focal point of contact, where they will be reaching out to all of the different organizations. There's a continuity of care that continues, and it's part of the recovery phase, which is going to be a long-term approach, and then you have there's more of a long-term relationship, and then again there's a development of the recovery plan. Some of the case management process we can look at broken down as follows. Outreach and screening. I will get in that feedback again. Are you able to determine on the screen who doesn't have their mic or their phone on mute?
I believe it's the 15405328346 number.
Okay, could someone
Yes.
mute that, please?
I'm going to try to mute them. Can you tell me that number again that you think it was?
I think it was the 15405328342.
I'm not seeing it, but I'll.
Okay. All right, thanks. So if you can keep an eye out for that, I'd appreciate it. All right, so we're looking at the case management process, and it's broken down to outreach and screening, intake, assessment and planning, action, advocacy, monitoring, and closure, case closure, and evaluation. When we look at outreach, you want to perform an outreach to the community, and that can be done in conjunction with the state, with the OEM, with FEMA. FEMA may provide a list. They have an ISA list. Could be as a result of direct housing. There's many different areas that outreach events. There are different ways to go out and perform the outreach, and the primary purpose there is to identify those that would be eligible for the long-term recovery group, a long-term disaster case management program. And it may be as simple, you just give them an INR and then information and referral, and then just you can just close that. But you really want to identify areas or families or survivors who have some urgent needs and they need a disaster case manager. And then you have the intake, which is a series of forms that one has, and you would again go through that process. You may have some information from FEMA, but with the DCMP program is several intake forms. You also want to get an ROI, release of information. You want to get an ROI to allow you to use whatever database, an ROI to assist with to be able to share the information you receive from them with other organizations and provide help. And you have an ROI for with FEMA. Then you saw that form in the prior presentation, and that's used more for DOBs or the what's called duplication of benefits information. And then you have the assessment. The disaster case manager will go through and assess the case, and sometimes we'll need the assistance of the DCM supervisor, and they'll look at the case and identify what the unmet needs are, identify those goals, and be able to put together a plan, a recovery plan. There are also, when we look at this, we break these down into tier levels, and we have tier levels 1 through 4, and this helps us to prioritize the cases. And sometimes we'll have to go through and prioritize them. If there's many cases, we may need to prioritize them before we assign them to a DCM. And sometimes if there are full caseloads, we can use this process to prioritize cases. So when an opportunity or when an opening comes in for a DCM slot, we can move those cases. And so the tier 1 is basic. We look at basic immediate needs. It's more like information and referral type thing, type situation. And the monitoring on this is on a quarterly. You have tier 2s, include some households with some remaining unmet needs. And the contact that the DCM needs to maintain is on a monthly basis. Tier level 3, a little bit more significant unmet needs. Case manager will be assigned, and they'll develop a recovery plan. They'll outline the goals. Goals will be outlined. specific responsibilities assigned, and they'll be able to track that as you go along. And with this, the biweekly contact is important to monitor the plan. And then you have tier 4, which is really the most difficult, and it involves both immediate and long-term unmet needs. It's more for the disabled, elderly, low income, who have high level of social service needs, but also households that may have total devastation, may need to relocate, and needs maybe a house rebuilt or repaired. So it may be on the verge of homelessness. So these are some of the tier levels, and these are the key tier levels that we have used throughout the program. And then you have the recovery planning, and this is the key part where you work with the survivor, with the client to develop a recovery plan. You specify the different goals based on the unmet needs, and then these goals are tracked. You make referrals based on these unmet needs, different organizations, and this way you're able to monitor the process. And as you have this recovery document, recovery plan, the DCM will be advocating on behalf of the survivors, the client, and be able to obtain different resources or make presentations to the LTRGs, just depending on the situation, but they're going to advocate on behalf of the survivor client. And then we have where we monitor the progress, and from our DCM point of view, we monitor to make certain that the DCM is contacting the client. You're able to look at the case notes and see what has been accomplished. We're able to look at the goals that have been established, and we're able to identify what progress is made. So by looking at the initial tier level, by looking at the goals, looking at the case notes, and looking at we have indicators in there which identify the progression of the case. By looking at these different indicators and case notes, we're able to get a sense as we look at the program throughout the life of the case as to what the progress is and how they are doing. And then once the unmet needs are completed, once the unmet needs, the recovery plan is achieved, then the supervisor, in addition with the DCM and the survivor and client, they discuss the goals, what has been achieved, if the recovery plan has been achieved, and then they look to close the case out. And then after that, survey is sent out, there's an evaluation, and the supervisor will look at different evaluation techniques to monitor what has been done. Some of the forms that are used, there are intake forms, and I touched on them earlier. There's an intake and assessment. There's a detailed intake form. If anyone is interested, we can share that at a later time. There's different release forms that are needed. We track the income and expenses. We put together a recovery plan, and we also make certain that we have documents that are needed, supporting documents if we have to make a presentation to the LTRG. And one of the other things that needs to be put in here is a DOB, duplication of benefits, and there you need a FEMA release of information form. This is a diagram which kind of shows that the case manager is the central focal point, has these relationships with the state, federal government, FEMA, LTRCs, private entities, voluntary, and government entities. A one-stop shopping where this case manager has these relationships with all of these different organizations in order to develop and continue to advocate on behalf of the client to advance their recovery. Sequence of delivery. Oops, let me go back here. Sequence of delivery. This was brought up on the prior, and a couple of things. I just want to share with you. When you look at where this begins, it begins with the voluntary agencies. So any of the orgs out there that are voluntary agencies, it starts with you and it ends with also the finalizing the unmet needs. Most of the times it'll end with the voluntary agencies and nonprofits. What I want to share with you on this sequence of delivery and try to put this in perspective. So we looked at the disasters, we looked at the roles of the case managers, we looked at the process, and now you're looking at, all right, so now what is it that they do? What are they looking at? And you're doing an intake. Well, the way this sequences of delivery is set up, the disaster happens, the person's affected by a disaster, and then they go and they register with FEMA. Okay, and then FEMA wants to make sure they're safe, sanitary, and secure, and may give them a few $1,000s to help them to be in that situation. And then there may be some additional needs that they may have. Maybe they need more additional assistance. Well, now the situation becomes they go back to FEMA, and FEMA may not give them additional money depending upon how they use the initial funds they gave them, if they have receipts and things like that. But then they start looking at the insurance part of it. Well, did they get insurance? How much did they get? So you have to look at that. Then you look at, did they apply for the SBA loan? And this was mentioned earlier. I cannot tell you how many people leave money, and this is families, survivors, leave money on the table because they do not apply for the SBA loan. And I hear this across the entire country. And I'm one of the biggest advocates of saying, if FEMA tells you to apply for an SBA loan, you apply for the SBA loan. And there may be certain situation in which FEMA may not tell you to apply, and still you may be able for the ONA, other needs benefits. But generally, people, if you're told to apply, you should apply. Because if you're eligible for funds and you have the capacity to pay it back, that'll help you with all of the items that were outlined earlier. And if it doesn't and you are denied, then that opens up for other needs assistance. And you're looking at for just a registration with FEMA is $36K. If you're looking at maybe ONA, that may be another $36K, depending upon the situation, and each case is an individual case. So that's what you're looking at. And then, so you're looking at the registration, filing with the application with SBA if needed. And then if you fail the requirements, then you have ONA. And that at least gives you some sort of a starting point. And this way you'll have an idea of what's going on, and also the DCMs will know. And then after that sets you up for any other. If you go to apply to a long-term recovery group, they'll probably ask you on part of the application, what funds did you get from FEMA, from ONA, from SBA? Did you get anything from any other organization? And these are the questions that you have to ask. So. Or that will be asked of that individual. So that's kind of the way it should shape out. And this way it'll put you, the DCM will help put the survivor client in a position to be able to optimize whatever funds are out there for them. And this is a quick picture here. When someone applies to FEMA, what's expected, and they may get the FEMA, depending upon the COVID restrictions in the area, you may get a FEMA inspector, and then you'll see the report, and then you'll get a decision letter. And the point I want to make here is that many times clients will, or survivors will get a decision letter and they'll say denied, denied. And they'll say, oh my God, I'm denied, and they won't do anything about it. And I like the position that Alicia took about appeal. But my biggest thing is appeal, and then if you get rejected again, appeal again. And this is what happens when the survivor receives a denial letter. If they read it carefully, there may be something in there where they're just looking for a piece of paper, piece of information, and that would turn the whole decision around and allow you to get some additional funds. Duplication of benefits. This is a hot item. Duplication of benefits, and I'll read this out. Various forms of assistance and programs, flood insurance, disaster repairs, grants, etc. Help people whose properties have been damaged by natural disasters to rebuild and relocate. Other sources cannot be used to duplicate what the federal assistance has provided, or the applicant is at risk of a penalty for duplication of benefits or mismanaging valuable LTRG resources. For instance, and if property owners have already received assistance to repair their properties from one program, and the other program, including the property acquisition program, must ensure they don't provide assistance to cover the same loss. So basically, that is what, when we look at the duplication of benefits, you're not going to, if you bought a living room furniture or you receive assistance for personal property for living room furniture, and you go to Salvation Army and you get assistance for the same type of furniture, that can be considered a duplication of benefits. So, and that gets to be an issue. So the DCMs and the DCM programs, that's one of the things that we try to do is minimize the duplication of benefits. There's a form that's needed, and I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. But we look at this, there's a DOP report that we can get from FEMA, and that shows the assistance that's provided for property, housing, and things like that. And that's something that the DCM would use to, and they would incorporate that into their recovery plan. When we look at, after applying for FEMA and then working with the survivor, there's what's called the DAC, and it's called a DAC account. And this is something we suggest that all of the clients that we work with should be able to set this up. And this will give them some insight into the different assistance that was provided to them. In order to access the DAC, the client needs to be able to call. There's a form that has to be submitted, but if they have a DCM and they want the DCM to be able to share that, there's a form that has to be submitted, release of information form that needs to be completed and submitted up to the NIPSI. So this way, when a case manager or disaster DCM or client calls, they can be on the phone together, and the information could be shared. I need to be careful about the PII information, and that's a reason why FEMA has asked for this ROI consent release that allows the DCM and also the client to be able to get information from FEMA. And what the DCMs have, and lately in the disaster that we have in Oregon, getting the DCM, getting the DOB has been a challenge. Submitting the reports up, we submit the releases of ROI up to to the NIPSI, and sometimes it takes days to do that. And sometimes it's hours. It just depends on the data flow and the workflow that they have. But what was done in previous years, they had the ISA file where they provided much of the information that's provided from the NIPSI, and it was contained in the file, and authorized users would get it, and then from that we would be able to create internal DOB reports that were beneficial, and we were able to turn that around in a couple of hours. And that gave the DCM a little insight as to what was received by the different, by FEMA, and whether or not they had applied for an SBA loan. So the PII, the consent forms, all these things are important because we want to make certain that the private information is secure as possible. Taking into account that we try to protect against the duplication of benefits, we're looking at the information going up into FEMA. We want to make certain that the DCM has a good sense as to what assistance has been provided to the client, and we're doing that because we want to avoid any duplication of benefits. Because if there is a duplication of benefits, then what will happen is there's something called a recoupment letter, and this generally doesn't happen right away. It can happen like a year and a half later. In Oregon, we had a case where one of our clients received a recoupment letter, and for $5,000. So it was FEMA felt that there was $5,000 that were issued. So needless to say, the clients in a panic, and having gone through all the stress that they've had, that they've gone through wildfires, it's now an issue that has to be addressed. And so things, just some tips and hints here. So read the letter carefully, and you may see that number there, you owe us 5,000, but then read through, and it may be as simple as providing receipts, providing some explanation, some documentation. Yes, don't panic. The valves are always a great partner in all of the DCMPs in which I have been involved in, and they're always a great resource to bounce things off of or ask them for guidance and for suggestions. And they would definitely, that would be definitely one source that I would go to ask for information. We talk about at the beginning of the program, and I'm sure FEMA says this: save your documents, save your receipts, save your receipts, save your receipts. And it's hard to get that through. Many times people will get X number of dollars after a disaster, and they'll go and spend it, and they don't think that they should be saving receipts. And if they do, that saves a lot of heartache down the road. So that it may be as simple as, producing some receipts. And sometimes if you can't, the DCM can't help, the VAL can't help, and then you may have to seek some legal assistance from the Legal Aid Society. And finally, appeal. I can't tell you how many times you need to appeal, because you never know, and you may finally get it right with the documentation they're looking at, and then you may appeal, and then whatever that situation may be rectified. So that's some advice that always I tell the DCMs. If you get a letter of declining, just appeal, and you have to look at it. You seek advices and try to rectify it and try to provide the information, but you should be looking at that, always trying to appeal. Okay, so let's take a look at long-term recovery. This is that time following a disaster in which agencies and organizations help affected persons and communities to develop and implement plans, structures for an extended recovery over a period of time. So So we understand we have the disaster, we have the DCMP program, you have the DCMs that come on board, and the DCMs are now trying to help the survivor, the client, being able to, they put their recovery plan together, look at the resources and look at the unmet needs. And now they're trying to figure out, how am I going to get these unmet needs addressed? And that's where you come into this long-term recovery portion, where you start to look at who's going to help you with this long-term recovery. You have the long-term recovery groups, and what is this long-term recovery? And we look at the definition of this, and it's the completion of many or all of the emergency relief programs, the gradual reduction of the presence of the outside organizational representatives. Then you have the casework and recovery initiatives being administered by the long-term recovery committees, and then the initiation of government recovery and or mitigation programs, as DCMP. So you start to see, after that initial response, you start to see the long-term recovery aspect kick in, and you start to see what a DCMP is being formed, and then you have the LTRGs are starting to, long-term recovery groups are being formed. And some of the basic level involves identifying the individuals and families with unmet needs in the community, providing case management in order to prioritize how the needs will be met, and delivering goods and services and funds to meet those needs. So these are some of the areas, elements that the LTRGs will start to look at as they start to form up. Let me come back. There we go. So the different entities or organizations that can form a long-term recovery group, it could be a community-based organizations, non-faith-based, voluntary, private, faith-based, and disaster response organizations. You'll find many of them sitting at the table. You'll have, there's different categories, which I'm not going into in this slide, but I'll do it in a little bit. But there's different areas in which they can be, focus on. One of the areas relating to case management, they have a disaster case management committee, and they'll have perhaps an unmet needs committee that will hear cases and be able to provide financial assistance when deemed necessary. The long-term recovery group, it's a combination, a collaborative body of different representatives of the faith-based, and maybe you may even have some business organizations in there, and they all come together. As they come together, they'll look to form, which is always an interesting challenge, and some of the valves that are on the call, they'll probably think back to the times when they were working with newly formed LTRGs and helping them to determine their bylaws and whether they want to be a 503c3 or whether they want to be funded, and be able to hire a director, and what committees that they want to put together, and things like that. So it gets to be a big challenge, and it's at the beginning it can be disjointed, but after a while, and I do have to commend the FEMA valves who are involved in that. They do very well at helping to help create and steer the committee, so this way they can grow, not telling them what to do, but kind of providing guidance to allow them to set up these different LTRGs. So that's important. Some of the different functions that you have in the LTRGs: disaster case management, construction, volunteer, financial controls, emotional and spiritual, communications, donations management. All of these things are vital. The LTRGs may or may not have all of them, depending upon the way they are constructed and whether or not you have many people that are willing to participate. But the main ones that the DCMPs will be interested are working with will be the disaster case management committees side of it. And sometimes you have an unmet needs table, but this is pretty much where you'll be dealing with it. And then these long-term recovery groups, you're forming partnerships, you're identifying the unmet needs. There's a lot of information sharing that goes back and forth. But the key thing is they're able to identify what the resources are. And it's amazing when you have all these multiple partners at the table that through all the network, and they're able to bring to the table, and also maybe through some grants, all the different assistance and resources. We had one of the LTRG groups in Oregon just found that yesterday received a $900,000 grant to build small homes, and that's going to be great. They'll be able to service a number of homeowners that have had their houses burnt to the ground and be able to give them these new small homes. When you look at the data flow for LTRGs, you're looking at LTRG identifies information needed for an application, and the way, excuse me, each of the LTRGs will develop an application form, excuse me, and that's what they'll use. They'll give that to the DCM, and the DCM will have to complete it on behalf of the client. In no circumstance does the DCM, does the client go before any LTRGs. They may reach out to them and say, I have a need, but a survivor or a client would not go before a LTRG, unmet needs committee. So there'll be an application process. The LTRG will lay out the specifications for and requirements for presentations. They'll also track any awards and appeals, and they'll monitor the progress. They'll set up some sort of a project management sheet, and then they'll track the awards given by different partners. The relationship between the DCMs and the LTRGs is very special, and the success of getting the client back to some sort of new normal is instrumental, and it's based on the good working relationships between DCMs and the LTRGs. The DCM, the case manager, is a primary contact with the client. LTRG assists and with resource allocation, construction, volunteer management, and fulfilling the unmet needs. So they're a key link. And the LTRG should have a fair and equitable process for disaster case management. That's the reason why when cases are presented to an LTRG unmet needs committee, it should be anonymous. The application should not contain any personal information. It should be anonymous, because you don't know, there may be somebody sitting on a LTRG committee that knows a person that was affected, especially in small towns, and that can have an impact on the result or the decision. So everything, you have to be very sensitive about PII, and later on, if they do have an award, then that information can be shared with the finance team. But whenever you're presenting, you should not have any identifying personal information that's out there. DCM relationships to the LTRG. LTRGs provide DCM managers with a venue for case presentation. DCM will not provide client-specific information at the time of presentation. Mention that, and confidentiality must be maintained, but aggregate client information is necessary for resources to flow. Continue with the relationship LTRG. DCMs can help LTRGs understand and verify client trends and needs. And keep in mind that if the DCM program is using, let's say, an IT platform like VisionLink, and all the cases are in there, all the unmet needs are in there, and how we are addressing the goals and what unmet needs are being assisted, we start to have a picture, a data picture as to what the progress is of the program and how the program is helping the various survivors. And we'll see, what we like to do is after a couple of months, start to show trends and needs and how they're being addressed. LTRGs can help DCMs understand what resource providers need to know about clients and what resources are available. LTRGs can help develop the resources, and they're very instrumental in obtaining different resources. Once they start to get a sense as to what the unmet needs are, the trends, the cases that are being presented by the DCMs, then they'll be able to get available resources, and also reach out to national partners and see if they have the materials and resources. LTRGs can coordinate volunteer labor assistance, and many times we had a project in DCMP in Florida, where we were working very closely with a DCMP, with a LTRG, and we were able, through our national partnership with an organization that provided shingles for roofing. There was a roofing project, so they provided roofing. We were able to obtain a grant with Lowe's Reconstruction that provided some supplementary materials that were needed for the roof, and the LTRG was able to obtain the assistance of a contractor to do a roof, and they were able to. They would pay for it out of their own, but they would also out of their own coffers, but they were also able to get it at a discount because of the relationship and the other projects they would have on their schedule. So it's and they would also have, volunteer labor. They would keep track, and any of the skills where the non-licensed skills were needed, they can use the volunteer labor. When we look at, so now we talked a little bit about the LTRGs and what they do, and the service resources they can provide, but they're just not going to cut a check and say, yeah, you're telling me you need a roof, is $15,000 for the roof. There's a process involved, there's an application, and the DCM has to come in and provide and do a presentation. Excuse me. And some of the things that we would look at in the LTRG in a case presentation, we look at the disaster-related needs, interviewing the client survivor, verification of information, identify what the unmet needs are, looking at the recovery plan, and complete the LTRG presentation, and also get a copy of the DOB. So these are all the things as you're a DCM and you're looking at this, and now you have to make this presentation. And this I want to share with you. Many of the DCMs, and the first or second time around, it's kind of intimidating because they may be standing, or it could be Zoom call, or however they do it. Depends on the LTRJ. But this could be very intimidating because you don't know what questions they're going to ask, and we try to prep them by there's different areas that we want them to be knowledgeable in. But and it's intimidating because you're asking for assistance for his family, and sometimes they always not get. It's not all the time that you get funded. So there is some anxiety on the part of the DCM when they're presenting this the first couple of times. And this is kind of a checklist that we put together for the DCMs, and you'll see some of the items on the checklist are disaster area. Do you rent? Do you own? Is it a mobile home? Damage assessment? Number of in the household. Did you receive any money from FEMA? How much was awarded? SBA. And a lot of these things are found on the DOB insurance decision, mortgage loan recovery plans, and excuse me.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have
Right.
8 minutes left. and-
Yep. Just let me finish the last slide, and
Beautiful.
We'll be fine. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. And when you're going through the LTRG process, you have different client needs, and then things are going into the there's funding that goes into the LTRG table, and all these presentations go in. But unfortunately, not all the cases get funded because they don't have enough funding for all of them. But a good majority of them do. But so it's important that you have good presentations and good good documentation to support it. Now, I've had some other. We're gonna distribute the slides, and there's some more slides on lessons learned, and I was gonna do a Jeopardy thing, but I think we only have about 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to open it up to any questions at this point, and this way we can I can try to answer any questions that you all may have. There has to be at least one question.
Yes, please feel free to take yourself off mute.
Hi, this is Sina Jenkins. I was wondering, are there any restrictions on what organizations and agencies can start an LTRG? Or could it be anyone?
I don't think there's any restrictions. I don't know of any, as long as you develop a sound mission statement, and you're going to work with the families that are affected in the community. I think FEMA does a very good job in identifying interested organizations that may play a role, but I don't think there's any restrictions. As long as, the LTRG will develop, and they will create a mission statement. And as long as all the partners agree to that mission statement, they should be good.
Sina, this is Terry. I'm one of the VALs here deployed on this mission. And Amy put her contact information in the chat box, I believe. If you could just shoot her an email so we can get contact. We'll have the VAL that's responsible for the county that you're representing, reach out to and see what we can do. We have a VAL map that defines who's responsible for what things, and we send the rest of the things out to you all, the presentations and so on. We'll send you one of those maps that has the contact information on it for us.
Sorry, Terry, the last part got cut off. All it was Amy.
Sorry, I hit the mute button too quick. Do you want to add anything?
No, not really. Sina is actually with the state, the Commonwealth. So, but yeah, we'll send that out so that everybody knows who their VALs are that for each county. We have VALs divided up among the 8 counties that were declared. And so we'll make sure that that's sent out also.
And if you have any more questions about developing a long-term recovery group, we're always a good source of information, but Julia from Lutheran Social Services would also be another good person to reach out to.
Hey, this is Julia. Thanks, Terry. We would love to see long-term recovery groups engaged in any of the impacted counties. The region currently has a long-term recovery group operating from Tropical Storm Isaias last year. And really the long-term recovery groups are integral to equitable survivor recovery. It's a best practice to make sure there's outreach to everyone in the community, and then also a way to kind of identify unmet needs. So would love to partner with counties, nonprofits, and so forth to get that started. Right now, it seems as though the county human services and emergency managers are taking the lead on that. So if any of them want to partner with us, we are very happy to partner for long-term recovery and can't get it started soon enough.
Awesome for that. Thank you all. We have 1 more minute left. If anyone has any other questions.
You have Jeopardy up here if you want to try. You can do case manager for 400 if you want. So here we go. Let's go for 400. Let's see what we got here. All right. Early intervention to disaster survivors, stabilize and transition short-term relationship with disaster. What do we have in the chat? Tell me what you have in the chat. We have an answer. The answer is doom, doom, doom. Okay. The answer is, what is it?
What is casework and what is the two answers there are what is casework and what is IDCW.
Oh, see, I didn't even want to throw that curveball in there. That's a good one too. That's true. All right. What do I have? 30 seconds left. Oh, one more. Here we go. Let's try this one. Duplication of benefits for 200. John Doe received a letter stating he has to pay back 20,000 back to the federal government. What is that? Dun, dun. And the answer is, what is a recoupment letter? Remember that. Duplication of benefits, important. Okay. I think my time's up. And I got 2 questions in, so that's good.
No, thank you. Thank you again.
I'll include this with the list that I send you, so this way they all can take a look at it. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Anthony.
You're welcome.
And again, thank you, Alicia, for taking the time out to present to us on this great material. We greatly appreciate it. And we will be sending out this information to the participants on the call. If anyone else has anything to say, if not, y'all are free to drop. Thank you.
Thank you.